Hello, my name is Erin, and I'm a K-5 elementary music teacher in Northern Indiana, and I'm also the teacher author behind From Do Re Mi to You. So I teach in two different buildings. In one building, I teach kindergarten through 5th grade, and in the other building, I just teach kindergarten. So I see a lot of the littles, and I have a very special place in my heart for kindergarten music. It definitely is herding cats in the beginning of the year, and sometimes most of the year, but there is something truly magical about kindergarten. In the classroom, some kindergarten students come in full on reading and having an educational background, having been in preschool and understanding the constructs of school, where other kindergarten students come in not knowing their colors or their numbers or having any idea what school is about. And I always say, God bless kindergarten teachers for taking such a wide range of abilities and be able to have some semblance of a class. On the music side, you may have some students who come in always singing a song and maybe having done Suzuki violin before. And then you may also have some students that have never even had a lullaby sung to them by a family member. So we can't always assume that our kindergarten students know anything about music. So one of my first units that I do in kindergarten is understanding our different voices. Speaking voice or talking voice, whisper, shouting or calling, and our singing voice. Some students honestly don't know how to control their voices or how to switch between their voices. There are lots of different ways we can teach and practice the different voices, but before I get into those, there is a debate. Should it be 4 voices or 5? There's a big debate in elementary music circles on whether or not to add the 5th voice, the thinking voice, or audiation. We often ask kids to audiate the songs or nursery rhymes or chants that they learn. And if you have experience in music learning theory, Gordon even says that it's the foundation of musicianship. So I personally do believe in labeling the thinking voice as one of the voices, but I may not teach it right away in kindergarten. I may wait to 1st grade to fully label it, even if we use that concept in class. So here are 5 ways that I teach and practice the 4 or 5 voices in elementary music. Number 1 is the chant, "This is my speaking voice." Now this chant I originally learned from Music Play, but their version is a slightly different version of the Loretta Mitchell version in the book 1, 2, 3, Echo Me, which is now unfortunately out of print. The original version goes like this, and it's an echo song, like this. This is my speaking voice, I use it every day. This is my speaking voice, I use it every day. This is my whisper voice, it's quiet, don't you say? This is my whisper voice, it's quiet, don't you say? This is my shouting voice, I use it to say hey. This is my shouting voice, I use it to say hey. This is my singing voice, I like it, it's okay. This is my singing voice, I like it, it's okay. Now, if you want to modify this song, you can use talking voice over speaking voice. Some teachers prefer to use the term calling voice instead of shouting voice. And for the line, "This is my singing voice," I don't particularly like the last line. I like it, "It's okay." So if I use that version, I tend to say, "I love it every day." Now, if you are a music teacher that wants to include the thinking voice into this chant, you can also add the line, "This is my thinking voice, it helps my thoughts to stay." Now, if you're teaching this chant, obviously you cannot immediately audiate that to the students because they probably can't read your lips correctly. But for things like this, I will teach it to them in the speaking voice, and then we practice in the whisper voice, and then we turn the volume all the way down to level 0, where they're mouthing the words, they're thinking the words, but we're at a level 0. Number 2 is using puppets. Now, I have to admit, this came from David Rao from Make Moments Matter, but I absolutely adore his storytelling abilities and his use of puppets. And I may have gotten way too many puppets a few years ago. So several years ago, I listened to him on Instagram Live where he shared about how he uses puppets to introduce the four voices. Now, I don't use his lessons and a story exactly the way he does, but I'm going to link his blog post down here. And if I can find it on YouTube or Facebook when he did his live, I will link that as well. But he uses a story to tie all four voices together using these puppets. So my story may be a little bit different than his, but he starts out with a rabbit. I think he calls it Peter. I call him John because of the song John the Rabbit. But we share a story about him stealing the vegetables out of my garden. And he declares that speaking voice is the best voice, even though it could be his favorite voice, but all the voices are important. Then the next class, they're all asking to see John, but I tell them I have another visitor that's going to come. And that friend is Flitter, my butterfly. So Flitter flies around the room and she talks about the whisper voice because she has really sensitive ears. Then the next class, we have Hoot come in, and Hoot is my snowy owl. Oops, where's her face? There you go. And Hoot talks about the singing voice because she hoots all the time. And I even have Hoot fly around the room, and when Hoot is flying, the students practice singing either high or low on ooh. And if she lands on my shoulder or on a student's head, then we stop singing. Now this is really funny because my students know her as Echo. They have a snowy owl just like this one in their classroom that they use for foundations. So I say that this is Echo's sister, Hoot. And then the last day I bring out the bear for the shouting voice. And this is definitely David Rowe's story, but the bear gets really excited and just wants to shout. Even though we're in a school, we have to be quiet. So I even make up a story about how the principal doesn't know that I brought a bear to school, and he promised that he wasn't going to eat anyone today, but he is kind of excitable and I don't want to get in trouble for bringing a bear. And the kids find the story hilarious, and it works really well for them to learn the four voices. And then I leave them out on the top of my piano for the next couple of weeks, and we can refer to the puppets as we talk about the four different voices. Number 3 is using the game Johnny Whoops. Now this was a game that I learned as a kid where it was a hand game, but there was a trick at the end. I don't use the trick part with my kindergartners, but I'll teach it to you anyways. It goes like this. The students are supposed to copy exactly what you do. Johnny, 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 whoops, Johnny, whoops, Johnny, 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 Johnny. And then they do it back. The catch is, you probably will say, no, you didn't do it quite right, because they need to copy exactly what you do at the end. Now, I don't do the trick part, but instead I say, I want to do the chant, Johnny, 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 whoops, Johnny, whoops, Johnny, 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 but I don't have anyone in here named Johnny. So instead, let's have Will. And then Will will say, I want to use my singing voice or my whisper voice. And we do their name instead of Johnny on our hand using the voice that they choose. Like this, Will, 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 whoops, Will, whoops, Will, 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 Will. Or maybe it is Ava using the singing voice. Ava, 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 whoops, Ava, whoops, Ava, 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 Ava. It's a really simple game, and I may just do 4 or 5 students in a class to review and then mark them down, and then the next class I choose 4 or 5 more students. And once the students are really comfortable with this game, you can add other voices. They may say a silly voice or a spooky voice, a British voice, an underwater voice. The possibilities are really endless, and the kids have a lot of fun with them. And if you struggle with learning names, this is a really good way to work on learning your kindergarten students' names. Number 4 is to use chants or songs that they already know. So some elementary music songs already use 2 or more voices. Some songs that come to mind are The Three Little Muffins, which uses the speaking and whispering voice, Little Cabin in the Woods, which uses the singing and talking voice, and Boom Chicka Boom, which really has endless possibilities. But honestly, you can take any song or chant that they already know really well and have them practice it in the 4 or 5 different voices. So you can either use graphics on your whiteboard or clip art on a digital slide and have them sing a really simple song or a chant, maybe the ABCs. And you can point to the singing voice, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then switch it up for the next line to speaking voice, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Maybe you go to the thinking voice. Then the shouting voice, W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you sing with me? If you don't want to lead, students can also take turns leading as well. Number 5 is the game Good King Leopold. So I do a huge unit on the 4 voices in the fall of the kindergarten, but I also review the 4 or 5 voices with first grade. So my first graders, they see that the puppets are starting to return to the classroom in the kindergarten classes, and my first graders remember the stories and they want me to go through the stories again. So it's really natural for me to want to extend this unit with first grade as well. So for them, I use the game Good King Leopold to review the different voices in elementary music. This is a really simple game where one student acts as the king or the queen at the front of the class. You can have them dress up with a crown, even a crown for Burger King works. And you can use a rhythm stick or a pointer as their scepter, and they sit in a chair in the front of the class. And the rest of the students are the peasants. And the peasants ask, Good King Leopold, may we cross your kingdom? And then the king responds, you must ask again, this time use your singing voice. And then the students have to respond, Good King Leopold, may we cross your kingdom? Now, the king may ask them to use a different voice again, but at some point, they're either going to say yes, or they're going to take their scepter and go ding. Now, what happens after this? There are different variations on this game. I have played this game a couple different ways. You can do it as just they get to travel freely across the kingdom until they ding again. You can do it as freeze dance. So once they ding a second time, everyone has to freeze. And then the king chooses someone that froze really well. You can also play this as a recess game where students have to run across the kingdom and the king tags someone to become a guard. And then every time you do it, the guard and the king tag more people. And then the person remaining would become the next king. The only downside to this game is that if you want to use this for assessment for solo singing and speaking, then you want a version of the game where you're going to have a lot of different kings. I personally tend to use the freeze dance just because of my larger class sizes and my small room. Now, the fun thing is, like Boom Chicka Boom, you can have all sorts of different voices. So day 1 of this game, I usually focus on just the 5 voices. By then, we add the thinking voice. But day 2, I can have them choose other voices like underwater, royal, sad, scared, excited, and it's really fun for them. Now, I know that my king or queen sometimes gets nervous singing by themselves, and it's not that they're singing by themselves, it's more of they're afraid that they don't remember the words. I am a personal fan of having visuals, which is why I created a Good King Leopold digital slides lesson that has visuals for the students. And it has not just a review of the different voices, but it has the lyrics to Good King Leopold, and it has pictures of the different voices, the 4 voices, the 5 voices, and then I extended it to include dog, cat, excited, royal voices. So they have a reference to choose from. I'll show you some pictures up here where you can see a review of the different voices, and then you can also see what it looks like when you go to teach the chant. And then when you want to play the game, you can just have this slide up on the board to have a visual reference of the lyrics and the different voices that they can choose from. And I have found that this makes my king or queen much more confident in being able to sing by themselves. So there you have it. These are the ways that I practice the 4 or 5 voices with my students. If you have other ideas or things that you do with your students, I would love for you to share them down in the comment section below. And if you want my good King Leopold slides, I will also have those linked below as well. And as always, happy musicking.